You're listening to another episode of Battles with Bits of Rubber.
Hey, look what came in the mail.
Ooh, they look like glass coals.
They are. They're the number 19 punch needles that he said he was going to send, and he delivered.
Amazing. There we go.
Lars, you're the greatest, man.
Oh, fantastic. Nice one, man. I'm glad he came through. That was good. And postage didn't take too long, I guess.
No, it was a nice surprise. I got home from location yesterday. I've been shooting for the last 3 days, off today, and then shooting again tomorrow. There's a COVID compliance officer.
Do you have a big hat?
I do. A very big hat.
Nothing to do with the job. I just like to wear a big hat. Go upstairs and go on.
With a little propeller on the top.
Well, we've had a really good week, actually. I've been quite busy making stuff and making molds and having fun. And I've got some painting coming up and a couple of days filming something next week. How about you?
Well, that test makeup, the picture of the test makeup you sent me looks fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I learned a lot and we had fun with it. We shot some footage. And then, I'm basically going to, I'm rerunning pieces. I ran one piece today. It's curious. I'm doing those compression molds. You got a silicone insert. And I put a load of flocking in. And it's weird how when I clamped it together, because sometimes I used to have molds where I would inject them in this, but these are floods and then squished together. And it's funny how the flocking has collected on the edge on one side really badly. So I'm going to see if I can use it, but I'm running another one anyway. And for that one, I'm not going to put any flocking in it for that reason, which is a shame because I do like flocking, but it doesn't work with these compression molds very well. It seems to collect curiously in that one side.
That's interesting. I wouldn't think that would happen. That it would just stay evenly dispersed.
It's weird. I don't know why. I think it might be to do with the fact I'm using like little squeeze clamps. So they provide constant pressure. So I think maybe the core gradually moves in or something like that, and it squeezes out one side.
That kind of makes sense.
That is an interesting one, which doesn't happen with a rigid mold, so that's a different thing. But anyway, there we go. That's me learning stuff. There you go.
Always learning. Speaking of learning, we had some cool emails that you alerted me to.
Yeah, we had some really nice ones. Really cool.
Yeah, no, I was reading them and got to confess, I got a little emotional. It's, as artists, we never think we're good enough, and we don't really think that what we're doing matters to anybody else. We're doing it because we love it.
Yeah.
And to get an email from somebody that's such positive reinforcement
lovely, isn't it? We had a few.
That what we're doing has made a difference and mattered to someone's career.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was amazing.
Yeah, we'll get through those and we'll do them in order of how they came. The first one we saw, which was really cool, Alistair Murray got in touch and had some pictures of molds that he'd made from before that were surfaced. They were all ultracal molds, but surfaced with Repro 1 urethane and another one with an epoxy gel coat, which we were talking about before, and one in a material called cast aid, which I'd not heard of before.
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's made by ADM Tronics, the company that makes Prosaid, but I've never had a chance to
use it. Do they just like
it.
making stuff with the word aid in it? Is that so? They got lemonade. It's okay.
And Alice, he teaches down in Australia at Scott Latimer's school, I believe.
It's a small world, man. We all kind of linked in, but yeah, it was lovely. And he showed me these molds, and some of them. He said like this one was back from 2003, made in cast aid. He can't find any reference to it now, which is interesting. I wonder if anybody knows if ADM Tronics is still making cast aid, and if not, why not? But he said it's very similar to Forton, which I haven't used Forton, but it sounds like we've discussed before, very similar to Jesmonite, which is very similar to Acrylic 1, which is like a kind of a more environmentally friendly, safer, less toxic, wash your brushes out with water material. And these are all kind of like little block molds, and they look, for small molds like that, which a lot of people will do, especially when they're trying stuff out, that's as big a mold as you need. So these would be really good. I think things may change if the molds are huge.
There's Donna saying hello.
I'm keeping that in, even though we have the ability to edit that out on separate tracks. That makes me laugh every time I hear it.
Yeah. And I think that's why she did it. My friend Dave Parvin, who sadly passed away a few years ago, was a fine art life caster. And, I learned pretty much everything I know about life casting from ouch. I don't know if you saw that Gracie, one of my cats was lying on the desk here, and she's been relaxing, and she just relaxed a little bit too much and rolled right off the desk and tried to grab hold and just took my arm with her.
Is she drawn blood?
Are you okay, baby? Are you?
Good
I
Lord.
think so. Are you okay, baby? Ow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, look at that, geez.
Jesus.
Are you okay, baby?
Took out chunks.
Silly cat.
You got a couple of layers on there.
Ouch.
That's amazing.
Ouch. Yeah, I need to probably put something on that.
Should we put some music on while you go and attend to your wound?
Yeah. Well, that'll leave a nice scar for reference. I should probably take a picture. Of that right now.
Good Lord.
Never miss an opportunity to get
Absolutely.
a nice...
I mean, if they're stabilized and the ambulance is on the way, why not? I mean, as long as they agree to it.
Yeah, sure. There we go. Okay.
So thank you, Alistair, for that. That was really cool, looking at those molds and seeing that we were, we're not barking up a mad tree on that one, and that somebody else has done this before. It's like, it's amazing. These molds are still good and they still work.
I think he's also using... he's also using our podcast as part of his course material.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's nice. Well, hello to everyone that's listening to that. And he mentioned something in there called Wacker SF18 protective film. Now, Wacker materials, I've used Wacker AO7 before, which is like a caulking type silicone, but it's very fluid.
Yeah.
And we've used that as a primer for difficult silicones when you want something to stick to. I mean, you've got your obscenely expensive Silpoxy. I don't know if it's crazy over there. I bought a tube.
It's a tube.
How much is a tube for you? Like the size of a toothpaste tube?
About $20.
I think it's about £35 here for a tube of that. And it's okay. I mean, it does do the job. Don't get me wrong. It's good. But Wacker AO7 does the same thing for nothing like that. And it's... but I guess it all depends on what you like to use. But we used to use that on.
Well, how long does that take to set up?
10, 15 minutes. It's pretty volatile actually. So maybe that's why, I don't know. But we always used to use obviously platinum silicones are tricky to paint, so we would prime them with Wacker AO7 mixed with either heptane or naphtha or something like that. Spray that on, let it set up, and then on top of that, then you could use a conventional caulking. You could just use some really nice Dow Corning, whatever it is, 787 or whatever the bog standard good quality clear bathroom caulking, acetic acid, and that would stick fine now that you primed it with that. And that was an appealing thing because that wasn't an expensive thing. And I do like using Psycho paint, works very well too, but it's something you have to mix every time, and I guess you can thin it and use. Richard Martin was saying about that, like he thinned it, and if they're kept sealed in cups, it lasts for long enough for you to use during the day.
Yeah, well, I think the very nature of thinning it to begin with gives you a longer working time. I thin it with Psycho paint straight, just with pigment in it. It's just too thick.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really, really thick.
So you definitely have to thin it. And I just use regular old naphtha, which you can buy in whatever quantity you want, just from the Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store you want to go get it at.
Yeah, the naphtha I've been
cheap.
using, I went to a car repair, auto body shop repair suppliers, and they were selling it as panel wipe for, cleaning off panels before you paint them. And I think something like a 5 litre tin was about £25, which is quite reasonable for, that much. I mean, you can't buy lighter fluid that cheap. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's very flammable, but
yeah. And that's essentially what naphtha is. It's just lighter fluid.
It's really like a tin of lighter fluid is like £1, and it's fine, but it's just when you want to flush out your airbrush and all that kind of stuff, you want to put a decent amount in, it just makes sense to get a larger quantity. If you've got a fire cabinet, like we have steel cabinets here that I keep all the flammables in, and it's fine. You don't use a lot at any one time, but it's just nice to have 5 liters of it so that when I want to use it, I buy one every couple of years, instead of having to pay out for Novox every time. But Novox is good. I mean, I do like Novox. It's really nice.
Yeah. I have a problem with the matte Novox just because
it's way too matte, isn't it?
It's way too matte, and it's a fine line between the right amount and way too much. Then it'll leave a chalky residue that once it's there, you can't get rid of it. And
I've done it before where I will thin something down, like maybe 3 parts naphtha and 1 part Novox matte, so that there's just enough matting in there to do the job. But you can't use it pure, as I found, because it leaves a very chalky kind of residue. But
that's why if I'm working with straight silicone, not encapsulated, I think Tom McLaughlin's silicone art materials, his silicone finishing powder, is the shit. It's amazing. It actually works its way into the silicone and becomes a permanent matte finish. So it's not like just powdering the silicone with talc, and it looks really good, but will eventually wipe off. This stuff actually works into the silicone.
Okay.
And it's beautiful.
I should get some of that. I don't even know if I've ever used that. I don't know if we can get it over here in England. I wonder if anybody knows if we got it in the UK, but
I'm sure you can.
I'd like to try some of that. I've got his book, his Silicone art book. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I got that from Bitty a year ago, I think.
Yeah, that's the revised version of it. I've got one of his earlier versions of it, and it's an encyclopedia of silicone.
That's it. Silicone art. Silica's an art material, official update, version 1.3 by Tom McLaughlin. And it's fucking jam-packed with just really good information.
Have you ever met Tom?
No, I don't think so. Unless I met him at a trade show years ago, but we never spoke, I don't think.
He's a hoot. I really like him a lot. I haven't seen him in several years. We did a thing at the Complete Sculptor in New York.
Oh, wow.
Several years ago that Jordu was there, and Josh Turi and me and Tom McLaughlin. It was a great fun weekend.
Josh Turi, he's a New York guy, isn't he? I think.
He is.
This guy's, hi Josh. I think he listened to the show. I think he's been in touch. And that book as well, I've got as well, I don't know if you can see that, The Fundamentals of Facial Prosthetics by Robert E. McKinstry. I managed to find a proper copy, and it's basically about medical prosthetics.
Yeah, I have to get a copy of that.
But it's really, really, really in depth. It's really good. I don't know how much I paid for it, but I managed to find like a pristine copy. I bought it a couple of years ago, but it talks you through abutments and everything. It's a little old fashioned now, because we've had the whole digital scanning, revolution since that book was written. But there's a lot of good information in there, and because it's from the medical background, they don't tend to get bogged down in the showbiz side of things, and it's quite nice from a purely material. So that and the Silicone art book, I think, are really good, grounded materials.
Let's put that information up on the show notes so people can know what to look for and possibly where to get it.
Leave these out so I'm reminded.
Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to get that medical one.
Maybe for Christmas man will deliver to you.
Which is coming up rapidly.
Safe. Yeah, scary, isn't it?
Yeah, our Thanksgiving is next Thursday.
Oh wow! You got something planned? Nice turkey coming in.
Yeah, we Donna has got a turkey on order. She's going to pick it up on Monday, and we'll cook it up. I think we going to have a few family that are in our pod, so that we're all safe, and that because the COVID's still running rampant over here and wreaking havoc. But we're going to make sure we're all staying safe.
Yes, I think we're due for.
We usually don't put our Christmas decorations up until, at least December 1st.
Okay, as it should be.
But because of all this stuff, I think we're going to throw caution to the wind and put up the tree and decorations probably this week before Thanksgiving, because why the fuck not?
Yeah, fair enough. Yes, it's been a bit of a shit year, and if you can make things a little nicer by having some decorations up, then do it. definitely.
Yeah.
But in town, the decoration.
That's my story.
So thank you, Alistair Murray, for that. That's really nice to see, and I'm really pleased you sent those pictures in, and that's fantastic. One email we had in from Anna Randall.
That's a good one.
That was a really good one, and she had a whole bunch of questions, which I said, "Oh, I want to talk to you about this, but if you're happy, can we talk about it on the podcast? Because otherwise, we'll get through things." But one of the things that was really cool that she was championing, like I thought I was mad. You know, you're looking at all these amazing makeups and things like Game of Thrones and Chernobyl and Westworld and Fringe, The Grinch, Benjamin Button, and yet someone with like a bauble stuck in their cheek is still getting amazing views. And there was another one on Instagram or Facebook this week, and I was kind of like, I didn't say anything. I just kind of sat back and watched with bated breath as the whole thing plays out every time. And it's a weird one, man, because you still think, here's the thing. It is fun, obviously, to do stuff like that. But when you keep seeing stuff like scissors or pencils or baubles or whatever, it's kind of like, it's nice if you've never seen it before, but if it's the 50th time you've seen it, it's kind of like, it's just not a very original idea. But having said that, it is fun to practice. But here's my concern with it. If it seems to be infectious and people copy what they see, if you've done a bauble and you bought a plastic bauble so it's not that sharp, and what you've done is you've sanded down the edges and you've made a plate to protect your face and all that kind of stuff, and you've taken precautions, none of that's in the photos. It's just, so someone seeing that maybe doesn't realize that you've taken precautions, and so they just copy it with a glass bauble, and then they stick it on their face, and then someone gets cut. And okay, the onus is on you to not be stupid and put a piece of sharp something against your skin, but I'm just a kid, I'm just practicing. They don't know these things. So that's the legacy of that, is you need to make that clear, or you make your posts about how you made it safe. But even so, it's still, if you're at a party and someone bumps into you or you forget that you've got this accoutrement attached to your face, and you walk into a door frame or something because you don't realize it's 8 inches out from your face, it jams in there with a
and suddenly those scissors are 4 inches shorter.
Yeah, it's just like, ooh, so don't that. So yeah, it was just really nice. Thank you, Anna, for saying, yeah, thank you. Do you know what I mean? Because you only ever hear people moan at you for being a hater, and it's like, no, I also hate being blinded by a fucking pair of scissors that didn't need to be there. So the fact that you may have seen it in a film, you didn't realize that was a lightweight, safe prop, or it was a digital replacement or whatever. But anyway, so she was saying, thank you for pointing that out. So thank you, Anna, for saying
and you're very welcome.
But yeah, she was saying a couple of things. One is, how can you replicate a made silicone mold to run several of the same pieces? And there's a few different ways. Now, if you're talking about flat molds, you can just run a mold off of that. But you know what I found? This happened to me a year or so ago. We had a job, and I was kicking myself for not realizing this. But I made a plaster mold, like a nice hard plaster mold of a silicone mold that we wanted to reproduce. But I'd neglected to stick the silicone mold down to the baseboard. So what happens was I built a wall around it, flooded it with plaster, came back from lunch, and the silicone was floating on the surface of the plaster, and the plaster had set. I was like, oh shit, I had to peel it off, and basically wasted all that plaster. So you actually have to attach it, because it will probably float if there's any air bubbles in the silicone.
Good advice. And you need to do that also with 3D prints and possibly other models that you might be making a mold of, because if you don't stick it down with a little dollop of super glue or hot glue, and you're making a silicone mold of this 3D printed part, that's for dram cup holders or little 2-ounce bottles of Skin Illustrator paint or whatever, and you pour the silicone in there, and you come back 20 minutes later to check how it's curing, and the damn thing's floating at the top of the silicone. And silicone still hasn't set up, but now you've got to figure out how you can weight it down without changing the object you're molding.
I did years ago. I wanted to make a prop of an apple, and I did that. I poured silicone around the apple, completely not realizing that apples would float. And in something like that, you kind of need to basically have like a screw coming through a board and screw the apple onto it, so it's sort of physically held in place. It was a pain in the backside, that. well, not the apple. I mean, you're doing it wrong if that's the case. but, but yeah, it's one of those things that so you can mold.
It's happened to us all.
The alternative is you can make a silicone mold if you're making like compression molds, which is when you basically sculpt something up and then you make a jacket on that. So you need to cover your sculpt in clay, put a jacket on that, then make the jacket in something rigid, take that off, clean the clay out, put the jacket back on, pour up a silicone of it, then you can make a plaster copy, including the flange and the core, as well as the sculpt in plaster, and then you can mold multiples of silicone inserts off of that, which is a very convoluted thing and absolutely is not something to be discussed on a fucking podcast without visuals because it doesn't make any sense.
No, there is planning involved. It can be done, but
there is some planning, so it can be done. But a flat mold, very easy. But like I say, even I fucking completely forgot to attach it to a base because it will just float. But you just have it with your sculpt, your detail side up, and then you make a mold of the mold, and then it's pretty straightforward. But
yeah, but if you're doing stuff for show and you need 50 false noses to have one mold and have to run 50 of them, especially if you're doing it in something like foam latex, where you've got the time that it has to be in the oven, there's no way you can just have one mold for multiple copies of it. It becomes
tricky because you're trying to get two rigid materials to align, so the curvatures have to be exact. So that's why the silicon insert mold makes sense, because the flexibility of the silicon can accommodate those discrepancies and you still get great edges. But it's not easily explained. It's not something to do over the phone.
No, it's a visual.
It's a very visual thing, and it's quite convoluted. So it can be done, but flat mold's very straightforward. But like I say, make sure you attach them to the baseboard. Question number 2 is, when applying an encapsulated silicone piece, I use Prosthetics to glue down the silicone and cap plastic. However, I found parts of the cap plastic stuck down and then crease with movement. Is there a way to stop this? Do I need to use another glue, or is this the nature of cap plastic and glue together?
A couple of things going on there. One, it's because the cap plastic is non-porous and you're using Prosthetics. Prosthetics has a tendency to, with heat and perspiration, reliquefy, and that could be the culprit that's causing those creases with the movement. It also could be, depending on how thick the layer of the cap plastic is. The thicker the cap plastic, the more prone to
that would have been my first thing,
is
how thick is your cap plastic? Because it's hard to measure, but it sounds like the cap plastic's probably too thick. And also, like you say, how much glue. And the other thing is, if you put too much glue on, you let it dry, then you end up with a big, thick. Basically, it has the effect of stretch and stipple. Anything you stick on the skin. And it does depend on the person's skin. If the person's skin's quite loose or soft, then it's going to be more responsive to things like stretch and stipple, as we've all done in makeup schools, where you're doing stretch and stipple on 20-year-olds with perfect skin, and nothing happens because the skin isn't loose enough for it to take effect. You put it on me, it looks great, but that's because my skin's all loose and baggy. So you need another 30 years on top of that. But the cap plastic, and also I think how far, and we spoke about this I think the last time or the time before, not having cap plastic extend way beyond the edge of the silicone piece. And I've seen a lot of people will sculpt something, and then an inch away from where the sculpt ends, there's their cutting edge, and so the mold ends up being huge. And you end up
so there's a section on the face that's nothing but cap plastic on the skin. There's no prosthetic under it at all.
And I think so. You want to minimize the amount of cap plastic you have, and also making it quite thin. You want to go as thin as you can with cap plastic, I think, and you basically have to run them so that they're almost too thin. And what I found is, if you spray your cap plastic, get it as thin as you can. And the way to check is with a pin. So you spray it on the mold, and you want to spray beyond where your piece finishes, so you can lift up areas of the cap plastic with a pin that aren't going to damage the piece. And then you want to go as thin as you can so that there are no tiny holes when you lift it up and stretch. If it looks like a web where there are holes in it, then it's too thin. You need to run another layer. But as soon as it's not got holes in it, stop applying it. Run your piece, and then I wouldn't open it until the next day, because if you leave it overnight, your cap plastic will toughen up. And I think a lot of people spray extra layers of cat plastic. So they spray what they think is enough. They lift it. There's no holes, but it feels very thin because it was flexible. And I think that's because it's still fresh. And cat plastic takes a little time to mature, much like myself. I haven't yet. But if you spray cat plastic and leave it an hour, it feels stretchy and okay. But if you leave it for 12 hours, it'll be as tough as old boots and still be really thin. So that way you'll end up with a tough.
Well, if you're using the acetone soluble cat plastic, it'll feel cold. It'll feel cool to the touch for a bit after you've sprayed it. So, that's also a good indication that it's not cured. It's not ready to come up yet.
Yeah.
It still feels cool to the touch.
And also the alcohol cat plastic, I find, is more flexible and moves better with the skin. And whether or not there's a plasticizer you can add to the acetone cat plastic to approximate that, because I know in the States you have plasticizers that you can add to cat plastic. I don't know if we allow them or if we have them here. Allowed. Look at allowed. But I don't know if they were like illegal.
I've used it more. I haven't used it with the cat plastic. I've used it in Prosaid when I'm making 3D transfers. I add the plasticizer directly to the Prosaid when I'm thickening it up, because I don't like to put Cabasil in it because it
stiffens it up.
It stiffens it up too much. I will put it in a dedicated mixer and just let it go on its slowest speed for several hours and let the water naturally evaporate, and then you've got a much better. It doesn't shrink, and it's much softer. But Motion Picture Effects Company, they have an acetone soluble cat plastic that's water clear, and
that stuff's good.
It's available in concentrate or ready to spray, and I think it's every bit as flexible as the alcohol stuff.
Yeah, so I think maybe they've just got a nicer plastic that's more flexible, so it could be that. But yeah, I think the other thing I would check, one last thing, is how soft your pieces are, because it could be that you're seeing the crease on the cat plastic, but actually the creasing could be happening underneath the silicone too, if the silicone's a bit stiff, if it's not soft enough, because sometimes people don't make it. Like if it's Plat Gel 25, I probably want to go about 100% Deadner LV, or if it's Gel 10, maybe 180, 200% Deadner, if it's Smith's theatrical Deadner, or if it's Pro Gel 10, probably 100%. So it all depends on how soft your pieces are. There we go.
Yeah, and I think the same goes for the Smooth On FX Pro.
Oh, I've got another thing to mention here. We'll come back to it in a second. Question number 3. Once I have applied a prosthetic piece, the silicone remains shiny. I have tried to use alcohol paints, translucent powder, talc, barrier spray, and more to try and dim the shine, but nothing seems to matte it down. Is there a product you can recommend to help mattify the shine?
Well, the Tom McLaughlin's silicone finishing powder is one way. MAC Cosmetics also has a gel mattifier that I think it's called Matte Cream Mattifiante or something like that.
Yes,
which is really
good.
Which is really nice. You just got to be very careful. It only takes a very, very small amount to get good coverage.
Yes, that stuff is good. They used to Longcom used to make one called the T-Zone, and it came in like a green. It's like stuff of legend, and that stuff is incredible. That is not available anymore, but Super Matte Anti-Shine in the UK, which is made by Makeup International. There's also the matting gels. Bluebird make one, and I think Allied Effects is another company that made one, and it's like an alcohol-based matting gel, and it's really, really good. They do a gloss gel as well, and it's kind of like the gloss sealer that you get from PPI. That's quite good, but obviously you want it matte. But yeah, look in the Bluebird mattifying gel, because that one's excellent. And then it's something you place on the surface. I have a theory about that. A lot of the time when people run their molds, obviously they use Vaseline as a release agent. And so if there's a lot of Vaseline present on the mold surface, then when you run your cat plastic, it takes on that smoothness, that shine. And then even though there may not be any Vaseline on the surface of the appliance, because it was placed onto a shiny, smooth surface, that's the finish it adopts. So it is shiny, but it's not sticky. And that's why powders don't tend to work, because powders traditionally were on cosmetics that were still oily. So they would actually receive the powder by virtue of the fact that they were sticky. But obviously appliances are not, so you should try that maybe. And the other one I've heard of that's quite good is when you sprinkle icing sugar into the mold surface before you run your cat plastic. Have you seen that one where you spray that?
Yeah.
And then, that way you're putting down a matte finish into a mold, spray your cat plastic on it, and then when you take your piece out, you can just rinse the cat plastic under water. That dissolves any sugar crystals. It's powder sugar, really, really fine. And then that may have a matte finish. I would still be tempted to use a mattifying agent over the top, personally. And one other thing we did on Dracula, which was really cool, and it was Dave Elsie's idea, I think. We painted the pieces, but they wanted to have a durable finish over the top so they wouldn't get messed around during application, and we sprayed a very fine mist of cat plastic over the painted pieces, and that had the curious effect of matting it down too. So that might be an option you could try. Obviously, you've got to be very careful. We keep the brush far back so that it all but evaporates by the time it lands. Otherwise, you might disturb the actual cat plastic edge. But it worked really well as a mattifying agent. So that might be a consideration. Me just check on that one. That was your three.
I hope that helped, Anna.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your support. It was really awesome to have feedback. Because that's the thing, we shout down the microphones. I don't know, we could be screaming into a fucking void for all I know. If someone doesn't come back and say, I really like that, or I thought you were stupid. Anything, just so we know people are listening. That's good. And there we go. I had a really, really nice email from a guy called, I hope I'm going to pronounce his name right, Steiner Karstein.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about his colleague. He's got a colleague called Per Steiner Hofton, and he has done he heard the podcast that we did with Lars, and we mentioned Lars had a Deadner calculator for silicone. Well, he sent me a link to Per Steiner's website called FX Calculator, and it's fxcalc.monster. I'll send you the link. And it's basically a website that has all these different silicon softnesses, mix ratios, weights of clay to silicone, density calculators, measurement converters, and volume calculators for cubes, silicon, ovals. It's really, really cool. I mean, it's balmy, but you're like, someone's doing this stuff. So I will put a link to the fxcalc.monster in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much to Steiner for getting in touch, and thank you, Per, for sorting all this out, because the people that do this stuff, it takes a lot of work to put this stuff together, and then you just put there, and then, we don't have a huge amount of clout, and I think particularly, we don't have a massive listenership, but I really think that the people that listen tend to really care about the subject. So it gives me great pleasure to throw a spotlight on anyone that's doing something that's, through fucking effort and hard work trying to improve things. So you should go check that out. It's really handy.
Well, did you see the email that we got from the founder of FeedSpot?
Yes, I did.
That kind of blew my mind a little bit. Yeah, and so I can butcher his name, and you won't.
I had my turn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Anuj Agarwal, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He said he's the founder of FeedSpot, and he would like to personally congratulate us as our website, Battles with Bits of Rubber, has been selected by their panelists as one of the top 10 prosthetics podcasts on the web.
Which is interesting, but I'm like, how many are there?
And there's a link to it. Well, we're listed as number 1, which is cool. I personally would like to give you a high five and want to thank you for your contribution to this world. This is the most comprehensive list of top 10 prosthetics podcasts on the internet, and I'm honored to have you as part of this. We'd be grateful if you can help us spread the word by briefly mentioning about the top 10 prosthetics podcast list in any of your upcoming posts.
Well, I'm going to read through the.
Okay, we'll see if we can't get to that.
We good, but I'm horrifically suspicious. So I'm reading. Number 1 is Battles with Bits of Rubber. That's good. Number 2 is ABC Credcast,
which is a medical prosthetic podcast about prosthetics and pet orthotics.
Yes, these are like proper
American Board of Certification in Orthotics. Yeah, medical prosthetics.
And there's a Daily Dose of Orange Juice, a podcast about amputees navigating the new normal. Out on a Limb. That's a great name for a podcast for amputees.
another medical one. Yeah, they all seem to be medically
Yeah.
oriented,
So we're kind of,
except
they
for
must feel
us.
like we're hideously unqualified to do it because we just happen to share the name, prosthetics. But that's lovely. So that's nice. That's been a good week.
Very cool.
And then the last email we had this, well, I think this came in today from Raymond MacArthur, who was saying, thanks for lots of nice things. I won't read it all out, but it was basically saying, I mean, I remember going to this college. He's saying, oh, you won't remember me, but I'm like, I do remember you. I remember, I'm pretty sure you had glasses and brown hair. Am I right? And I know you were doing a barbering course and it was at Greenock. I'm pretty sure it was James Watt, I think maybe the college we were at in Scotland, and I was doing a demo there, and he shocked me when he said 10 years ago, and I was like, Christ, was that really 10 years ago? But anyway, he was saying thank you, and we've influenced him positively, and I just think that's really nice to hear. So thanks, guys. That's really sweet.
That's the one that kind of got me emotional.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So that's very, very cool. So I spent 5 years at college in total. In my third year, I got my hand on Todd's book. There we go, which instantly became a Bible while studying. I felt the materials and process delivered to us with practical in their purest forms and getting to grips with the technicalities of mold making and casting. Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, so he's been working all over the world in the 7 years he's been doing it since finishing school. He's been working in Belgium, Lithuania, and Prague, Czechoslovakia, Valencia, Madrid, Guadix in France, all over the UK. That's
amazing.
Awesome.
Oh, thanks, Raymond. Thanks for getting in touch and letting us know that. That's really cool. So that's been, we've had a very positive, I think it's because we put 2 podcasts out in 2 consecutive weeks. People have started to believe that we actually do podcasts again. Because it's been that crazy kind of year where we're letting an entire month go by without a bloody mention. And
yeah. If you're all quarantined, why aren't you recording more podcasts?
That's a fair question, I suppose. I've been tremendously busy, actually. Like I maintain, if you have a job where people have to ask you, this is going to sound a bit weird, but I don't know if that's how your jobs start, you go, yes, that's probably a yes then. So we will check that out. I had another thing I was going to tell you about, and I can't think what it was. You talk for a bit, and I'll try and think. Otherwise, we may be done.
Put me on the spot.
I had a thing, and I can't think what it was.
I'm sure we got plenty to talk about.
I was going to talk to you about something.
It's interesting because production here seems to be, up until just this week, been picking up again. As I said, I'm doing 4 days on a really nice commercial shoot, but as a COVID compliance officer, not a makeup artist. And we've had some recent new surges in COVID, and I have a feeling it's all going to shut down again.
All right.
Very quickly.
Have you been finding people have been complying? Or has it been, have you had to break up?
Yeah, actually, it's
meetings that people are grouping together and licking each other's noses because they're just not allowed to.
It's been pretty painless.
That's good.
Everybody is starting to get, at least the production folks that I'm working with, understand that, why some of this stuff may seem like it's overkill, it's not intended to be oppressive or restrictive. It's more of a, better safe than sorry. Mm-hmm. It's like I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. There have been some instances where, some of the setups have been requiring, we've had kids on set, so everybody that is in zone A, we're working with the zones, so the clients are staying away from everything. They have their own remote video village, and they're socially distancing there. Grip and Electric is in zone B, where they're minimally into the set, and when shooting starts, they're all out, and everybody that's in with talent is wearing a face shield as well as masks, because the talent is not wearing masks. So everybody is getting it. It's on board. I was kind of half expecting there to be a little bit more pushback, but no, not really. It's everybody signed pretty. I have to give credit to the producer on this spot. She's a sharp cookie, and she really did her homework in her background, so everything came prepped. I got pulled into this like almost the day before they were shooting. They'd had everything changed I think, canceled a couple of times before they finally got together because somebody had been exposed and blah, blah, blah. And they had a COVID officer that suddenly just wasn't going to be able to do the show. So I got called, and the next day I'm onto this 4-day shoot with little prep time of my own. Fortunately, I've already put together a pretty comprehensive kit of supplies with a digital thermometer and masks and disinfectants and a really powerful UVC lamp, and so I was able to step in without having to have a whole lot of preparation.
That's great, man. And that means that allows productions to go ahead.
They really had their they really had their shit together. So I had lists of everybody on the crew, and they just would come in. They would sign the list. I'd take their temperatures, write that stuff down, give them wristbands for the zone they were going to be in, give them a fresh mask if they needed one, give them a face shield if they didn't have one of their own. And excellent. Boom, we were off to the races.
Man. Making stuff work.
So we're on a sounds. Yeah, we've been on location in houses and outdoor locations. Tomorrow we are on a sound stage all day. So
different
may need to be a little bit more vigilant with things because we'll have a lot of people all in close proximity. But it's a large stage, so it'll be easy to be easy to space things out, and hair and makeup will be actually in a hair and makeup room.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because when it was kicking off before, it was like summer, so you could have windows open and fans blowing, and it was fine. But now it's getting cold. It's a different kettle of fish to have the windows and doors open all the way through. I know what the other thing was I was going to talk to you about was somebody called Thomas Toohey. Have I pronounced that correctly? Toohey? Tuohey, and he's made this really cool thing. He's put up on Thingiverse, and it's basically a drill mixer head with a 1/4-inch 6mm threaded center. And I printed one off, and it's really, really good for mixing up small amounts of anything really, but it's designed to draw up from the bottom, so it really pulls the materials up and mixes them. He just put it up on Thingiverse, and it's just like, that's really cool, man. And I used it to mix up some Jesmonite last week, and it worked an absolute treat. So I just thought I would let you know that, and I will put that link into the show notes. It's thingiverse.com/thing, and the number is 4648372. But thank you, Thomas, for that. That's very kind. And it works a treat. He's done a 6mm and a 1/4-inch for
I'll have to give that one a shot.
Users, or those who are not using metric drill bits. But frankly, I would imagine if it's soft enough, your steel bit might bite into. I don't know, it might not shred it, but it works either way. I was really happy with mine. It worked really well. So yay!
Sounds good. Well, I've got. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. My little resin printer, my little frozen Sonic Mini 4K is printing. I'm doing another test print in the background. I have to replace the little plastic sheet on the bottom of my resin reservoir because I say, be careful you don't puncture this with a toothpick or something. And of course, I'm the king of the idiots. I punctured it with a toothpick, trying to get. Yeah. So I've got to replace that. But I mended the hole with a little bit of super glue, and it seemed to work just fine. But I've got some replacement plastic that I'm going to go ahead and do a proper job of it.
They do, yeah. I mean, mine's a little bit,
because they do get scraped up pretty easily.
I think the trouble is that it then prevents the light passing through, so you'd end up with a sort of a spot where it wouldn't expose properly. So yeah, it's probably not a bad thing to keep a couple of. Does it come as a roll, or do you buy them as spare sheets that you replace?
They come in sheets that are larger. I mean, it probably would work for a larger printer as well as my little one, but they come in 6x9, whatever, and you pop it on, and then you just trim the excess after you've got it secured in place.
Excellent. Oh, I thought of one other thing I wanted to talk to you about as well, or a couple of things. I did a really nice, we had a Zoom class on Friday, which was really cool, using this camera, with the EOS webcam thing. That made such a difference. That was cool. And it took me back to another class I'd done a while ago, and I was talking to well, there's a couple of things. One is I think I may have put my foot in it in a way, but at the same time, you know what I'm like, I'll say what I really think, and if that's the wrong thing that upsets somebody, then that doesn't make what I pointed out wrong. It just makes it awkward. But if the awkwardness is coming from the fact that it's true, then that's kind of shitty. But one of the things I wanted to point out was, depending on where you go, a lot of colleges, it seems, I don't know if you know this or if it's the same, but a lot of them will have assessments based on their makeup, but they'll have to produce the costume and everything else for it. And it's a weird one. And I think maybe it's okay in some ways in my head, because maybe things are changing. But it seemed to me, if you were to watch, say you do, I don't know, a really cool, say you do the Frankenstein makeup on Robert De Niro. If he's wearing a jacket, as the makeup artist, you are not required to make that jacket, because that would be the costume department who make the jacket. So if you have a certain amount of time to do an assessment, and because the makeup you're doing happens to be an Elizabethan character, if you are, as part of that assessment, required to provide an Elizabethan costume, there's going to be some time that you could spend doing the makeup that you're not, tracking down a ruff and a jacket, and maybe you've got to make what you can't hire or find or whatever. And although there is some value in doing that, I would argue that as a makeup artist, you're never going to be required to make the jacket. So it seems a little bit shitty to rob some of their makeup time and include in that, like, do you know what I mean? And it's a little bit, especially if you've hired a photographer to do.
It's also you're grading them on something that they aren't, making the costume is not part of their responsibility as a makeup artist, but they're getting points taken off of their makeup because they don't have the proper wardrobe.
Yes. See, and by extension, if you take your own photos and they're not very good, then you could argue that maybe you get demoted for not understanding photography well enough, but they don't. Typically they'll nowadays they tend to get professional photographers in. So it's acceptable to have a professional photographer relieve you of the burden of having to produce a good photograph, but you are required to produce a good costume when you're not a costume person.
Mm-hmm. I share that.
That was one beef I had. But I do think at the same time, to some degree, nowadays that there are more people doing cosplay and stuff, you could argue that maybe makeup and costume in that regard will blend in. But definitely for film and TV, they are separate things. They are different.
Yeah. Well, this is where the theater people will come in and say, "See, I told you," because in the theater world, the costumer, hair and makeup fall under the umbrella of costumes.
Okay, so maybe that's where they're coming from.
In the theater world, it's only in film and television where hair and makeup are their own separate entities, and wardrobe, costumes is its own thing, which is as I think it should be, because in the theater world, costumers, even a small show with a limited number of cast members could have a crazy high number of costumes, depending on costume changes for different numbers, especially if it's a musical. That, every costumer I know has way more on their plate than they need to take on hair and makeup responsibilities also.
Yeah.
I think it's just
so maybe that
it's
perfectly valid, but it's just one of those things. Because the other reason I pointed that out when I was speaking to them, and this was a place that did do that, that's why it was a bit awkward. But the other thing that it brought up to my mind was when I go to see like trade shows, and you'll see these elaborate costumes because people want to produce something which is spectacular and gets photographed and noticed, which is a good, sensible business thing to do, I suppose. If you do something that lots of people look at and take pictures of, that's a way of sharing your work by virtue of you're making it clickbaity in a way, you know what I mean? But I have seen people with very extensive costumes, things on stilts, and they're all like flashing lights and, very, as a spectacle, quite remarkable. But then when you look up close, you'll see the edges of the appliances are awful. and the pieces don't match the skin color, and you kind of go, okay, maybe I'm just I'm using a very narrow prism to look through this stuff. But to my mind, I mean, a huge part of what I do for a living and teach and spend a lot of energy perfecting with other things is overcoming the natural inclination for things to just look like they're not real. Like edges don't care about you, colors don't naturally fall out the bottle right. That's effort. So when I see things that don't embrace that or really pressure test that difficulty, it feels like a wasted opportunity. And it's quite funny when you've got these amazing elaborate costumes and people will ask you, I really couldn't get the color right or the edges right. And I'm like, so your college has had you design this huge thing, but you still don't know how to do a good edge or match a skin tone. And that just seems odd to me, that you would be required to do something elaborate or encouraged to do something elaborate without getting the basics right. But maybe it's just hard to get people to do the basics nowadays. They just want a big thing to impress people in next year's catalog to get the new students in. I don't know. Is that an inflammatory thing to say?
Yeah, well, you've just been. No, I don't think so. I think you've actually hit on something that I've been bitching about for years. Even when I was teaching regularly at one of the colleges here, where the school is no more, fortunately. But I had fellow faculty members who were expecting professional quality, like big time professional results from students who've never touched certain software before. They're still learning how to do this stuff. And so, I think some teachers forget that students are there to learn and make mistakes and figure things out in an environment where they don't have to worry about getting sacked and going on the bread line to put food on the table. I think it's very difficult, if not downright impossible, to be creative and learn something from scratch at the same time.
Yes, you wouldn't expect a junior
and certainly not be able to turn out professional quality results. And if they were able to do those pro results right out of the gate,
that's a ridiculous expectation.
What the fuck are they in school for? They should be working at a visual effects studio or in somebody's shop sculpting things for The Walking Dead. They're in school to learn, and learning is making mistakes is part of the learning process. And if you expect perfection from your students who don't know how to do anything yet, well, I think that's unrealistic.
Very unrealistic. And I think it's important to make people realize how long. I mean, obviously everyone's going to be different. Some people adopt things quicker than others, but it does take a long time. And I mean, if you're looking at, people's work that you really admire, if you're looking at someone like Kazu or Rick Baker and you're holding yourself to that standard and saying, well, I've been doing this for a year now, why am I not that good? And it's like, well, because they've been doing it for like 20, 30 years, 40 years, and they work so hard all the time. And also, not everyone is going to be doing the same level. Do you know what I mean? Like anything, like you could all, you could ask a bunch of people to do something and maybe, 2 or 3 people really stand out. Then you do a slightly different thing and another different 2 or 3 people stand out because of different things. So it's like you really do have to change the scale at which you think you should be accelerating through this. It's like, you don't just do it and then it's like, oh, I've done a course for a year and now I know everything. It's like, no, it takes a long time to do it. And if you don't know that, you'll be...
Yeah, no, it takes a long time. It comes back to that 10,000 hours.
Yeah, but if you don't know that, you'll be beating yourself up thinking, what you think feels like a long time isn't. It's like, it's realizing that, you look at that makeup and you go, okay, like something like, I don't know, The Darkest Hour, for example, a brilliant, brilliant makeup, no question, done by very, very competent people at every stage. And they did a lot of different versions and they did tests and they had the best of everything at every stage, and that's how it should be. But if you're not aware of all of that effort that goes into it, and you've been doing a course for a week,
and it's also a team effort.
But I mean,
I've had just one person.
But I've had emails from students who are like, "Oh, I saw The Darkest Hour and I want to do that for my assessment. I've never made a prosthetic before." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you thinking? That's ridiculous. Who told you that that's what you should aim at? do a nose and a chin. And if you can do a nose and a chin fantastically, then that's a real accomplishment. But they look at a nose and chin and they go, oh yeah, but the darkest hour was all of these pieces. So therefore my nose and chin isn't enough. I'm like, but it's enough for what you know, because it's more than you've been able to do before.
And I think doing something, it's good to be ambitious and want to do big things. But if you don't know how to do small things yet, trying to do something bigger than you're capable of doing at that stage of your learning is going to do nothing more than discourage you and possibly put you off of doing it at all in the future.
Yes, it's a ridiculous thing to hold yourself to that standard. That's what I'm trying to sort of say, and that's why whenever I tend to do demos at trade shows, normally it's because I'm just too busy anyway, but most of my demos are quite understated things. They're not the kind of thing that would have been on the front cover of Makeup Artist magazine. But for the 20 people that stuck around to watch me stick it on, they tend to have learned more from it because I will answer their questions and they'll have seen it, and I've documented how it was made in the 3 weeks prior to that application, so they know what they're coming to see. So it ends up being a bit more about that. And I just think sometimes when a college or a place is driven to produce visually appealing things to draw in attention, that sort of supersedes the what I believe is the honest graft, the hard work of actually producing a realistic thing that looks real. And that might not be as spectacular.
Well, I think demo makeups also are different from makeups that are being applied to go in front of camera in 15 minutes. It's a demo. It's usually a teaching moment where you're not fully concentrating on the application because people are asking you questions and you're trying to formulate an answer that will satisfy them and keep them engaged, all at the same time as you're gluing on pieces and trying to get everything to line up properly. Your attention's divided.
Yeah. And it's nerve-wracking as well as a demo, if you do a demo makeup, because you've got all these people watching you. But that's the honesty. That's why I think having this conversation now, if I meet you at a trade show or people have met me, I will be the same. I will say the same things and think the same way because I'm absolutely straight with you about this. It's like, this is what I really think. And, I'm not going to have a big showman thing on stage. It's like, no, I don't know that this is going to work out. It might go wrong. I don't know. And I'll tell you if it goes wrong and we'll figure it out. Because at the end of the day, I want you to see what doing it looks like. I want you to come away going, holy shit, he was nervous about that. He was worried about it. And I'm like, yes, that is what it's like. So when you are nervous doing this, you will understand that doesn't really go away. That what you're feeling is right. That's how you feel when you do stuff like this. And you might...
No, Bill Corso and Rick Baker feel the same way. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And it's just a case of doing it whilst feeling that way, so that feeling doesn't get to dictate how you feel, or indeed that you should feel like you're abnormal for feeling that apprehension. That is perfectly normal. That's what I'm trying to say. And you get that from doing small things well and then gradually increase your sophistication and scale, because that way you'll do things quickly because you can turn around the time quicker and you're not burning through hundreds of pounds worth of materials only to go, oh, I don't know how to match a skin tone. I could have fucking told you that with a nose tip. You didn't need to make, an upper body demon to find that out. It's like, if you think you're not on the first floor, if you think you can fly, try taking off from the ground. Don't climb to the top of a fucking building and find out. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same with this kind of stuff. If you think you can do something, then try, and then you will be faced with your limitations, and then you can go, okay, this didn't work, why? And gradually find your answers. And typically this stuff doesn't just happen. Baby steps. And the other one, the last point I'm just going to make, and this I don't know if you've seen this over there, but I've been doing a lot of Zoom classes, and I'm hearing about a lot of college tutors that are required to do the same thing, because they'll maybe, depending where they've been at the moment, everything's kind of really tight, but a lot of colleges are just doing almost all of their teaching online, or they have bubbles that come in alternate days or something. So a lot of tutors are being required to do their stuff on Zoom, so they're videoing their stuff, which is right and proper. But the trouble is, obviously not everybody can make good videos. Not everyone's got the camera or the equipment or knows how to edit stuff or whatever, and nor should they have to. I mean, that's not a tutor's job. Do you know what I mean? They're not fucking filmmakers, they're tutors. That's what they do. And something like makeup is such a hands-on thing. And it occurred to me, this one college I was at, that everything, like the entire building was empty except for this one class, and the college I think, kind of like the fact that they're not spending much money on staffing, or they may, and I can see them cutting down on hours, and I can see them reutilizing videos.
That's probably going to be one of the long-lasting effects of this whole pandemic, unfortunately.
Well, I think it will, and I understand that places will strip back because uptake may not be as much because people can't do things or whatever. Where my problem is, I think, is when a college either charges the same for a course that is never taught by people, like face to face. So like the amount of quality teaching time you get is reduced by 90%, but the course fee is only 30% less, or something like that. And the other thing is that all this content that the tutors are being made to provide, in theory, if they just run that course next year, that they may not be necessary for as many hours because we've already got the video you shot last year and you don't have any ownership over that material at all. Whereas previously you did kind of have ownership over the classes you taught because they need you to teach them again, but you're not necessarily getting compensated for the fact that once you've committed it to video, in theory, they don't need you again because they own that material. And it's an interesting, and I don't know if any tutors have really thought about this. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it may ultimately come down to a residual or a royalty
I just think they'll use the videos and fuck them off the next year. I don't think anybody can get into that.
Actors. Yeah, no, you're probably right, but
well, it is because at no point have you agreed to sort of like
to
contribute to an ongoing library of information that is permanently stored, and it's an interesting conundrum that hasn't happened before because that's just not,
Yeah, while the course itself belongs to the school, the information is coming from the tutor. They've put all of that stuff together with, so it's an advanced makeup design class, and we want the students to
it's a weird one, man. It's very odd.
Learn have these skill sets by the end of the course. Yeah, it's
because I'll tell you this this thing.
Yeah, this
I won't name it.
Maybe we've just opened up a can of worms that's
maybe
gonna create a nice discussion, which I'm all for.
Well, maybe it's an interesting conversation.
I'd love to hear from some other teachers.
Yeah, and see what they think. I mean, I'll tell you why, because I've had another curious thing which happened. I won't name the college, but there was a college that wanted me to do something online, and then they wanted me to submit like the course material. So we basically discussed what we were going to do. I came up with a thing and a price, and then they take my course breakdown and they're obliged to go to someone else and see if they can get it for less. Now you could easily just shave off 50 quid or whatever of a thing, having come up with the course content. So I've provided the content layout and the format, and then they're going to take that to someone else. And then of course they could say, oh yeah, I could do that for a 10 or less. And then, and this kind of thing has come from someone who deals with spreadsheets all day long. So they're just looking at something and go, oh, so this person can provide the course. In theory, the course has got a name. So you give that same course to somebody else and they can do it for less. It's the same course. Like you're buying a bottle of Budweiser or something. It's like, well, if I get a bottle of Budweiser from one store and I get one from another store, it's the same bottle of Budweiser. So if I get it cheaper, it makes sense. I'll do it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not the same thing. If one person who's been doing it for 25 years is delivering the course and has a bunch of printed material that they've already produced that they can supply to back up that stuff, and somebody else has been out of college for a year says they can do the same course, do you know what I mean? You're starting to commodify something that isn't nuanced enough to reflect its true value, I don't think.
Oh yeah, no, I can give you a specific example from one course at this college that doesn't exist anymore, that I created the class. I mean, they let me develop the curriculum for this class. They gave it a name, but it was my curriculum. And I gathered all of this information. It was an acting class. Actually, it was an acting class for animators, basically teaching animators how actors create character. And I taught this class for almost 17 years. And, it was all my content that I gathered from multiple sources, that you could, if you wanted to make the effort, you could gather the same materials yourself and put it together into a curriculum. But I did it. It was in the order I created for it. There you go. Thank you. And then suddenly one quarter, I was no longer teaching that class. They gave it to somebody else on the faculty. And I won't go into specifics, but it pissed me off. And this instructor came to me and said, "Hey, can I have your materials for the course?" And I said,
Yeah.
"Go fuck yourself."
Oh, but it'll cost us so much money to do this again. I'm like, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
That's my material, not yours. It doesn't belong to you.
It's weird, isn't it?
Belong
It's
to the
weird. You can go
school.
to an author who's
It's
about to
mine.
release a book and say, "Could you just send me a Word file of your book?"
Yeah.
Come on, it's just a Word file. It's like, yeah, but it's taken me 2 years to fucking write it. It's like, it's what I do. It's my thing. Yeah, but you can send it in an email. Yeah, and you can fuck off. So, yeah. Oh man, I've got more stories like that. I don't know if I can go into it now, but it was just, yeah, I've had that. There's certain places that I don't work at anymore that have, the stuff they were teaching was stuff that I came up with and wrote and planned, like you say, and then it gets corrupted. And yeah, they had a thing of like taking the stuff that I had done, and then they basically sexed up what the curriculum was. They completely lied about everything. And there were students saying, "What are we going to do? This, and this?" And I'm like, I didn't say we would be doing that. And then they showed me the fucking curriculum that they'd been sent. And it was like, yeah, no, and I went through it and I was like, yeah, I don't do it like this. And here's why. That's why I wouldn't do this. Somebody else has taken what I've written and twisted it and added things that we were never going to do. And
the catalog looks nothing like the actual course material.
And that's why I will never fucking go there again. And yeah, and I keep hearing stories about how there's stuff being taught. You go, "Oh, they're still using your molds." I'm like, "Oh yeah, no shit," you know. Or they don't even know that those molds came from me, even though it says Stuart Bray flat molds on the side of the fucking thing. But anyway, but yes, so it's all a bit, yeah, these things happen. But do you know what? If you teach long enough, you're going to come across these things, and people get fucked over. So I would always argue, wherever you go to learn, speak to ex-students and find out, because there are places I know where those courses, the students are suing the place that taught them because they didn't get what they were told they would have, because the place lied through its fucking teeth. So those people are available to find. So if you're going to go to a college, by all means, get in touch with the students who went there previously and find out what their experience was, because things on paper and things on websites always look great, but there's nothing like an ex-student to give you the proper lowdown on the inside. Yeah.
Do some homework.
So there we go.
Yeah, do your due diligence.
But there we go. Ended on a bit of a fucking rant-a-thon.
You will be glad you did.
Over, sometimes you have to rant, because people don't realize this stuff goes on.
Hey,
but it just makes you older and wiser, and I'm a little bit more.
And there you have it.
Reticent to do new things with new people now because of it. But there we go. There you go. It's not always the materials that let you down. Sometimes it's the shell around which the place is working.
Well, see, that's the battle with the bits of rubber.
That was a good chat, man. I feel much better after that. Thank you very much.
I'm glad. I think it's only 3:00 in the afternoon, but it's a Sunday afternoon, and I think I'm going to go pop myself a Stella and get ready for my shoot tomorrow, because it's probably going to be an early call. I had a 5 a.m. call on the 19th, my first day on.
I got a couple of those coming up,
which meant that I had to get up at 3 to be able to be on location at the appointed hour. I'm too old for this shit. I think I'm too old for this shit.
I feel the same. Yeah, I sleep really well now. I go to bed, I go to sleep straight away. And the last thing I want to do is get woken up by a 3 a.m. alarm. But what can you do? It's got to be done.
Yep. Once I'm up, I'm fine. But it's just that.
Yeah.
Because I don't sleep well. I'm basically an insomniac. So I go to bed at an hour that's going to give me, I hope, at least 7 hours of sleep. But I'm tossing and turning. So literally awake every hour for 20 minutes, try to fall back asleep. So in that 7 or 8 hour period, I've maybe only gotten 3.5 hours of sleep before the alarm goes off.
Yeah, it's always starting jobs. I mean, if it goes on for a few weeks, you can get into the groove of it, but always that first day, certainly, it's like the day before you go away on vacation, you got an early flight or something. You're like,
because you've got that anxiety. Am I gonna? Is the alarm gonna go off? Is the power gonna? Is my phone gonna die? Or is the power gonna go out? So you're kind of always just waiting. Is it now? What, now? Is that the alarm?
Yeah.
It, just the anxiety of being
Especially
an
with
artist.
medical.
Or a COVID officer. Wear a mask. Be safe. Be healthy. Are you home working this week? Or are you back out on the road?
Yeah, I got a bunch of things to. What have I got? I've got another couple of pieces to run. I've got some paint tests to do. I've made some more stencils to help with the painting.
Oh, I'd like to see
I've got
those.
plenty to keep going on with. I will show you. I'll show you at some point. Yeah, I will. Well, there's still. I'll tell you what I have got. I'll go and grab the thing. It's really cool. I did the stencil using epoxy, and I was using. You talk while I go get the mold. One sec.
Okay. Yeah, I've done some stencils with. I have one of these little vinyl cutters. That's what the heck is it called? I don't know which brand it is, but I've got one of these vinyl cutters that Nix Herrera told me about, a material that's it's a really fine, it's maybe 1 mil acetate that you can run through this vinyl cutter and do airbrush stencils.
Nice.
That I've got the material. I haven't tried cutting it yet because I've just been dealing with too many other things, but maybe over the holidays when we're on lockdown again and can't do anything, I'll play with that and try doing some cutting my own custom airbrush stencils with this cutter.
Is that a cry cut?
It's not that one. It's hang on. It's right here behind me. It's
That's because it's expensive and it makes you cry when you cut with it
Yeah.
because you realize how much it costs you to buy. Todd is now looking for things and he's rummaging around.
Let's just call it the cry cut and be done with it. Because I don't see it. I can't see the logo. It's
No
the
worries.
same basic thing, but
So that's my stencil. Look at that cool pattern.
oh wow.
And what I did was I made the gel coat. It's all oversized. I've got to cut it down, but it's a epoxy coat, gel coat, and then it's the epoxy laminating resin mixed with what's that light stuff called again? The really lightweight, smooth on stuff. Freeform air. So I mixed up some freeform air, and then I put a few bits of the epoxy resin into it to make like a really runny paste. Put that all over, and then laminated a piece of the fiberglass, that weft weave fiberglass over the top, and then finished that off with another coat of the resin and freeform air, so it's sandwiched in there. So it's strong and lightweight, but a decent thickness. So it's kind of not, but the resin on the surface separated into this really cool pattern, and it looks really nice. So that was just a kind of a lucky effect, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if the pigment separated on the surface or what, but I was not expecting that. That was an additional benefit. It does look cool.
It looks pretty cool. Freeform Air have a new version of it's a faster Freeform Air.
Oh, cool.
Well, it's not really.
It's 10 hours instead of 12 or something like that.
Yeah, the cure time is still 24 hours. That just has a shorter working time.
Oh, that's no good.
It's like,
how is that a benefit?
It's like, how is that helpful?
Yeah. It's like, this is a can of Coke. It costs more, but it's the same size.
It's faster, but not faster.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the working time of the original Freeform Air.
No.
I would just like to have a 4-hour cure time instead of a 24-hour cure time.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if it was easily done, they'd do it. But I mean, these molds that I've been making with epoxy, they do take so much longer, but it's just nicer. It's a nicer material. It's really, I quite like working with epoxy.
I do like the Freeform Air. It's good stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to try some more.
It's strong and very lightweight.
The only issue I have with epoxy gel coats typically is they're just so thick. But I guess you could put a little bit of the normal laminating resin in it to thin it out, could you?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
As long as it's thick enough to stay put in place. Because the The epoxy coat, gel coat's quite nice. Like within an hour or so, it's ready to go. The medium is the one I've got, and that seems to be quite a nice speed.
Yeah.
I quite like it, but it's thick, but it's quite creamy when it goes on. But it would be nice if you could thin it down. I know you could thin it with acetone, but it's quite nice if you could thin it with just resin. I don't want to add something that's then going to evaporate out. But anyway, I'm going to stop this podcast now because I think we're done. But it's very hard to not, when you've been working away all week on stuff and you haven't really had a chance to kind of bounce ideas off of somebody else, it's a little bit fractious. So I'm like, I want to know more about that. But anyway, I'll shut up. Dude, thank you so much. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad we got a chance to have another chat so close after the last one.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping we'll get this one out the next day or so, and then we'll record another one this week, definitely, because a lot's going to be happening this week, and I'll have more things to talk about. But as you've heard, we do actually get around to reading these questions out, so please do get in touch at stuartandtodd@gmail.com or our Facebook page.
Yeah, or on the website, and you'll leave us a voice message.
Yeah, you can actually do that.
And tell a
we
friend.
say voice messages, an app on the website where you click on it and you can record straight from your phone. You can leave a voice message and we can play it out if you like, or we can just not read it or play it if you don't want us to. But it's quite nice to have other people's, because it's an audio thing. It's quite nice to record a message.
Yeah, we'd love to be able to put it on the podcast.
Yeah, and it's free. So in case you were wondering, it doesn't cost anything. It costs me to have the service fee out, but it doesn't cost you anything to make the call. There we go. All right, dude.
Cool. I will talk to you soon.
Take care, man.
Bye.
You can get in touch through our Facebook page or email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information. If you enjoyed this episode, tell someone else and help us grow by sharing it on social media. Thanks for listening.